Hey everybody, welcome to Star Wars Chat with Chris and Chris.
I'm Chris, and this is Chris.
Welcome. So today, our topic is going to be Ahsoka Tano.
Anakin Skywalker's apprentice turned rogue Jedi turned Rosario Dawson turned who's that from The Mandalorian? We're going to answer that question of who that be and why all your Star Wars friends were so excited when Rosario Dawson showed up.
Yeah, I was super excited.
Yeah.
Because that was a rumor for a long time and we didn't know if it was going to come true, but it did.
Yeah. I take a lot of my non-Star Wars fans' reactions. I gauge them off of my girlfriend, who often gets Darth Vader and Stormtroopers confused, and had to be reminded if Stormtroopers were good guys or bad guys recently. She thought Ahsoka was pretty cool. Excited to see Rosario Dawson. So
Ahsoka's badass.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's probably one of my favorite characters. Next to Yoda.
I think so. She's definitely got more of an arc than a lot of characters you see in Star Wars beyond maybe like Anakin / Vader, because we've seen the most of her life based off like, Luke has a bit of an arc, but like, Han, you see him from like what 35 to maybe supposed to be like 60, 65-ish in Star Wars world. We see most people in like a small and sometimes like chopped up chunk, where Ahsoka we see from her to be like, we see her introduced as like a baby, and then we see her as a young Padawan. We revisit her a few times, so yeah.
So Ahsoka's story starts where Plo Koon discovers her on her home planet.
And if you remember Plo Koon, he's the gross-looking Jedi. It looks like he has all these like tumors, and he's got like a little mask.
Yeah,
he's cool.
He's one of my favorites. Yeah, he's one of my favorites. He looks like this right here, just so you know.
Oh yeah.
So
the magic of editing.
But he's one of the cooler Jedi from the Jedi Council, I think.
Yeah, he's a starship pilot, like a pro pilot, I think he's described as. So he finds her on her home planet of Shili, I think it's pronounced. Shili. Who knows how to pronounce half these words?
Shili. Tomato, Han, Han.
Tomato. That is the planet that many Togruta are from, the homeworld of the Togruta, which Ahsoka is a Togruta. They get often confused with the Twi'lek. The Twi'lek are the monocolored ones, sometimes green, sometimes blue, sometimes red. Ahsoka is, depending on how you feel about the Jedi, adopted or kidnapped or whatever by the Jedi Order, becomes a Padawan. She's in the Padawan school at the Jedi Council.
Probably being trained by Master Yoda.
Yoda and a bunch of other. I think your first, like, up until middle school, high school age, I think, you're basically part of, like, Jedi school. Like, we've seen hints of that in the movies and the shows. Like, Jedi's cute little, Yoda's cute little kindergarten we see in episode 2.
Oh, yeah.
So that was Ahsoka. So eventually, after the outbreak of the Clone Wars,
Battle of Christophsis.
Battle of Christophsis, which is my favorite planet for obvious reasons.
What a coincidence!
Yeah, she becomes the Padawan learner of Anakin Skywalker. Which, if you just watch the movies, you're like, Anakin doesn't have like a trainee, but all of that happens between episodes 2 and 3, which it's easy to skip over. But like, how long of a time jump is there between episode 2 and 3?
I thought it was like 3 years, but I'm not certain about that.
We do a quick bit of research. How long are the Clone Wars? I'm not asking about the movie. Thank you. 3 years. So the Clone Wars are about 3 years, so they're about a 3-year gap between episodes 2 and episode 3. So during those 3 years, Anakin got a Padawan, and they went on fun syndicated adventures. So, during the Battle of Christophsis, which is clones versus droids
Battle droids.
battle.
Roger.
It's fun, interesting, but Ahsoka shows up, and Anakin reluctantly becomes her master.
Well, first he assumes that she's there to be Obi-Wan's Padawan.
Yeah.
And she says, "No, Master Yoda says I'm your Padawan." I'm paraphrasing.
So Yoda kind of pulled like a move. It's like, oh, Anakin needs one whether he wants it or not.
Yeah, he's not very happy about it. I guess he doesn't like being tied down.
No. But they bond. They go on a rescue mission to rescue Jabba the Hutt's kid, which that's another thing that, like, I didn't know Jabba the Hutt had a kid. Like, yeah, apparently he does. We don't know if Jabba had like a lady Jabba, or if they just reproduced by budding, or a clone, or grown in the ground. We have no clue, but there's I was about to say cute little Jabba, but he's still a little slug. Yeah, it's kind of a little achingly kid-friendly episode that we first meet her in the Clone Wars movie.
Yeah.
But yeah. So the bulk of the Clone Wars show focuses on Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Ahsoka going off and doing Jedi, Clone Wars, battle-y stuff. Yeah. Most of the show is there's some interesting plot lines and stuff, but all you really need to know is they had fun adventures. Until eventually Ahsoka gets framed for bombing the Jedi Temple.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So it ends up that Ahsoka's bestie and another Padawan, Barriss Offee, I think is her name.
Yeah, Barriss
Offee. Offee, tomato. She becomes jaded with the Jedi and becomes a secret separatist spy, and bombs the Jedi Temple and blames it on Ahsoka. So for a short time, Ahsoka is a fugitive from the law. She's stripped of her Jedi status, and it stinks. Eventually, Anakin and Ahsoka figure out how to clear her name, and she's invited back into the Jedi Order. But at that point, she's like, nah, I don't want to be a Jedi. Screw this. So she goes out on her own. So
that was one of the saddest episodes I've ever seen. Yeah. So watching her walk down those stairs of the Jedi Temple, that was pretty sad.
She'll be okay. Yeah, so if you're wondering why Ahsoka's technically not a Jedi, she's like a freelance Jedi. Like, talking about like the Jedi's inspiration from like samurai films. If the Jedi are samurai, Ahsoka's like a Ronin, like a freelance wandering Jedi.
A Jedi without a master.
Yeah, exactly. Because as the internet makes sure we know, Anakin is not a master.
Oh, that's a low blow.
Yeah. So yeah. Speaking of that, like why Anakin is on the council, but he's not a master in episode 3. You don't become a master until you successfully train a Padawan. And since Ahsoka quit, he doesn't get to be one. So yeah, Ahsoka's hobbing and bobbing for a little while. Eventually, we find in Clone Wars she fights Maul again, gets a pseudo command over old Clone Wars buddies. And,
Captain Rex, part of the
Captain
501st.
Yeah. Eventually, while that's happening, Order 66 happens in the background, which are the events of Episode 3. Again, if you're wondering where Ahsoka was during Episode 3, the last season of the Clone Wars explains it. She was off having adventures, fighting Maul on Mandalore. So while Order 66 happens, she saves Captain Rex from the Order 66 mind control chip thing, which, without going into too much detail, the clones were imprinted with a chip that made them kill the Jedi. So in the movies, it can maybe seem like the clones were like, they turned traitor, or that was always part of the plan. But the show goes into a bit more. It's basically a mind control brainwash ship, so they don't really have any choice in the matter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they do have the story arc in Clone Wars that explains the whole thing, because one of the clones kind of has a malfunction of his chip, and that's kind of how they find out about it. But they don't know specifically that that's what it is, but then it gives Captain Rex suspicions. So when Order 66 happens, he
kind of knows what's going on.
Yeah, and he has enough of himself left to tell Ahsoka about what she needs to look into. And then Ahsoka does, and she finds out that, oh, there's a chip, and that's when she saves Rex.
Yeah. Which, there's already a casting for Rex.
Well,
if Rex ever shows up in the Ahsoka show or in Mandalorian, Rex as a clone is a clone of Jango Fett, so played by Tamora Morrison, who plays another clone, Boba Fett, in The Mandalorian. So Tamora Morrison's got a pretty stable job, a bunch of roles he can play.
Now that's job security.
Yeah. So while he's doing Mandalorian stuff, while he's doing the Boba Fett show, it's very likely that'll show up in the Ahsoka show as another role. Yeah. So after Order 66, Ahsoka goes in hiding for a while, goes on a few other adventures. There's a book that goes over how she gets cool new white lightsabers. And then the next important thing we see her in is Star Wars Rebels show. She is a spy master, basically, called Fulcrum.
Yeah. I just want to say before we move on, Ahsoka has a very interesting perspective, because she was trained as a Jedi, but unlike pretty much every other Jedi, she has real world experience. She's been out there. She sees what happens in the real world when you're not sheltered by the Jedi temple and your masters.
Yeah, Anakin's got a little of that, because he was brought into the Jedi Order older than most other Jedi, as a slave. But Ahsoka, while she was brought into the Order as like a little cute little baby Ahsoka, she left the Order and was hobnobbing in the underworld and in the real world for a while. So yeah, I agree. She's got a interesting perspective that many of the Jedi are a little oblivious of, disconnected from.
Yeah.
The old Jedi temple is very secluded, kind of ivory tower kind of place. So yeah, Ahsoka becomes a key member in the early formation of the Rebel Alliance. She helps Phoenix Squadron and the whole Rebels crew off on adventures and things, until eventually she finally has her face-off with Darth Vader, who she does find out is actually Anakin. Yeah, and then the super exciting, I think it's season 2 or 3 finale? Might be season 3 or 2, one of those seasons. It looks like she gets killed in a fight with Vader. But we found out in a later season that this is interesting. I'm wondering if they're going to start bringing this into the live action stuff, or if it's a little too much for the mainstream Star Wars audience, but they bring in time travel.
Well, technically, it's not time travel. It's the world between worlds. So
Yeah,
time and
which lets you
space don't
time
really
travel.
exist.
Yeah, so in the last season of Rebels, they discover this alternate force dimension that basically lets you time travel. So a future version of Ezra Bridger, one of the main characters of the Rebels show, saves Ahsoka during her past fight with Vader. So that's how Ahsoka's alive. In the epilogue for Star Wars Rebels, we find that Ahsoka and another character, Sabine Wren, are going to go look for Ezra and Grand Admiral Thrawn, one of the villains from Rebels, who, without going into much detail, they disappeared together on a Star Destroyer guided by space whales off into the unknown. So yeah. So one thing we're not sure of is if that epilogue takes place before or after the events of Mandalorian.
Yeah.
So during the events of Mandalorian, we find Ahsoka on the planet of Caladan. Yes, Caladan. And she's doing her rogue Jedi thing, trying to take over free this town from this evil warlord who we find out is a underling of Grand Admiral Thrawn. We'll have another video on Thrawn later. Just need to know he's a Imperial badass. He's got blue skin. He's played by Mads Mikkelsen's brother in the animation, so don't know. Maybe they'll keep that in the live action.
Hopefully
So he's got a little bit of that Mads Mikkelsen, like, European menace to him. Yeah. And then, as we see in The Mandalorian, Ahsoka meets titular Mandalorian and a little baby Grogu. And yeah, I know it was announced that Ahsoka's getting her own TV show, which a lot of people are guessing is going to be a continuation of Rebels. So we might see Ahsoka possibly teamed up with Sabine and some of the other Phoenix crew, going to find Ezra and Thrawn. Save Ezra, take down Thrawn from whatever evil stuff is happening. Another rumor we're hearing is that it might be a retelling of the old Heir to the Empire Thrawn books.
Oh, yeah.
Which, if that's true, maybe we'll see some old original trilogy favorites show up alongside Ahsoka. Like Luke and Leia and all that.
That'd be nice.
Oh, we don't know. We don't know.
I suspect, I'm going to make a prediction. I suspect that the Ahsoka series in the first episode will start with that meeting where she meets up with Sabine.
I can see that happen. I can see that happening for sure. But yeah, Ahsoka's unique in that we know what was going on with her from shortly after episode 2 all the way to Mandalorian, which is one of the longest stretches we see of characters besides R2-D2 and C-3PO, basically.
Yeah, basically it's their whole life.
Yeah.
So,
and it's still going on, cool. Which is interesting too.
Talk about character development.
For such a long-running character, it's interesting that we don't have any kind of end date for her yet. We've seen her die or maybe die twice, but she always seems to come back, so
yeah,
we'll see what happens and why she's not around during we haven't gotten any kind of concrete explanation of why she wasn't around during the original trilogy, and we haven't gotten an explanation of what she's doing during the sequel trilogy, so it'll be interesting to see if they answer some of those questions.
But her voice does appear to Rey, so people suspect that she's possibly passed on in the Force by that point.
Dave
But you
Filoni
never
made
know.
sure to. He said something to the effect of like, "That doesn't mean she's dead." So
Which
who
is
knows?
true.
But I have a feeling that we don't know how long she grew to live, but she would be in her 70s probably by then, 60s or 70s by the end of Rise of Skywalker.
Um, yeah, I would assume she'd
The
be
original
roughly around the
trilogy
same
takes
age
place
as.
about 30 years after the prequels, and then the sequels are another 30 years after that. So
I think she'd
yeah,
be a little older than Han.
yeah, definitely older than Han. She'd be, yeah, 70 or so.
That
So
that'd
we
be
don't
a
know how
fair
long
guess.
to grew to live. But I imagine it's similar to humans. Yeah, let's see if I can find that out
I
actually.
I think I actually
Wikipedia.
looked it up once. I think it is similar to humans.
Okay.
It's like 90 years or something like that.
Okay. So it's not impossible that I won't see her as like some old, like wise Jedi lady, but
Yeah. But well, I can't wait to see the new Ahsoka show. It's going to be
yeah,
awesome. Rosario Dawson coming back. Um,
it's very exciting to see her cast because all the way back in the early Disney Star Wars days, she was tweeting out that she wanted to play Ahsoka, um, and the fans thought that was excellent casting. So
yeah,
it's nice to see some of these fan castings actually end up happening.
yeah. All right, Sebastian Stan, you're next. The new Luke.
yeah.
So that's Ahsoka's life in a nutshell.
Nuttiest of shells. So
Um,
yeah, she's
Definitely,
got interesting insight into everybody from Yoda to Anakin to Darth Vader to maybe even Luke and Leia and Han. We haven't seen them meet yet, but it's entirely possible. So yeah,
she's second only to R2 as far as what she knows about the Star Wars galaxy.
yeah, maybe Chewbacca. We don't know how much Chewie does.
That's true too. Yeah. Oh, interesting fact: Ahsoka actually met Chewbacca.
Yes, it
It's
is.
the only original trilogy character that she's met, I believe, that
R2.
we know of. R2 and probably 3PO, maybe.
Yeah, 3PO. Yeah, during the Clone Wars, like Padme had 3PO. So
But yes, that was
yeah,
another episode of
she's
Clone Wars.
of the
But
original trilogy people. She's met R2, 3PO, Chewbacca, Yoda,
oh, that's right. I
Obi-Wan,
forgot about Yoda. Ah, you just blew my whole
Vader.
thing.
Yeah.
All right.
Vader, Tarkin, Boba Fett,
Oh yeah.
Bosk.
Well,
It is like showed a little cameo in Empire.
of the main like Luke, Leia, Han, and Chewie.
Mm-hmm.
She hasn't met any. Well, maybe she has, and we haven't seen it yet.
Be interesting. I would be very interested to see her meet Luke if that ever happens. Luke
I
and
wonder.
Leia.
I wonder if she ever met Leia because she was recruited by Bail Organa
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
into
I
the
wonder if she
rebellion.
knows if Leia is Anakin's kid or not.
Interesting. No, well, I don't think so because then she would have known that Anakin was Vader.
Mm-hmm. We also don't know if Ahsoka and Obi-Wan met after again. So
Hmm.
Obi-Wan might have told her some of those, spilled some tea on what's going on, but we don't know about that yet.
Yeah. Well,
I have a
we'll find
feeling
out.
like the longer the Disney stuff goes, there's going to be a little bit of small little tweaks and retcons going on.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So there might be some. It might end up that like Ahsoka was actually, you know, flying a Y-wing during the Battle of Yavin or something like that, or she was just off
Never know.
screen in the Rebel base.
Yeah, you never know.
Yeah,
She could have been on the Ghost during.
they've done stuff like that, like
Oh,
in A New Hope, during the conference scene on the Death Star. One of those empty chairs is supposed to be Krennic's.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So they've done cute little retcons like that. But
And
yeah,
the
that's
Captain Rex in Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
Well, if you want to learn more about Ahsoka, just check out Clone Wars, seasons 1 through 7.
All of Clone Wars, and go ahead and watch Star Wars Rebels while you're at it.
Rebels. Read the book Ahsoka.
I would say the book Ahsoka is very good, but not necessarily critical in an understanding of the character. So if you watch stuff and you want to check out the books, definitely check it out. But Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels are really the core of the character, for sure.
Yes, yeah. We'll be back maybe next week.
Yeah, we'll find out. So in the meanwhile, toodly doodly, and may the Force be with you.
May the Force be with you.
May the Force be with you. What a world, what a world.
Sayonara.
All right.